Hey. Got that good old fashioned cleansingness going. Love that. I look like I'm in Alaska. Love it. Hey y'all, how y'all doing? Good morning, good morning, good morning. So I wanted to do a reread of Alice Miller. I didn't even realize that my sound went out the last time we did the book read. The sound completely went out. So we are going to do another semi re upload of Alice Miller for Your Own Good, where we're talking about child cruelty, right? And the hidden roots of violence. So, we're going to talk a little bit about child cruelty and the hidden roots of violence that stems from this psychologist's field of background in psychology is the early developmental stage of child infancy, right? So we are going to get just like right in the middle of this book, okay? So please be sure to go ahead and like the stream and watch all of the other videos titled For Your Own Good to kind of get caught up on the subject matter. I think like the real actual purpose for us to do this reread or just to do this read in general, um, because what I see a lot out in the world is that it's more easier to point out that there is the problem, that is the problem is over there. Um, if there's an issue or a problem, like a big collective issue or a problem, right? When we never point the finger and look at us first through the mirror as us playing a part to the majority of these issues that are occurring in society. We're upholding violence, we're upholding cruelty, okay, especially against children, right? So we actually play a part as we are raising and rearing children as well because they will grow up to be adults one day. And the actions in the environment that takes place in the early stages of childhood development will foretell about 999.99% of their future. Not all, but the majority of all will have, you know, some barriers in their future or not, depending on their early child development stages. Now, a lot of times we don't have, control over all that, but um, what this psychologist, Alice Miller, is talking about really, environments that are controlled, like in a two-parent home, right? So where there is some stability, right? Where there is two parents, two guardians in the home that's helping, you know, raise the child. So yeah, her study, okay, is about child rearing and childbearing. So I think a lot of times it's just more easy for us to point out to the world and say that's what's going on. The whole violence it continue to come, happen because this is what people are saying because people are crazy. But yet and still we continue to give into society. We continue to have mindless actions in our major parts of our life, who we date, our relationships, who we continue to have relationships with. Um, even some of us aren't or are familiar with our childhood development stages and aren't aware of how it's affecting their now moments. Okay, so there's multiple things going on, but more specifically in this book, we're just going to do a slight little background, like two sentences of like childhood development stages, but then we're going to get right into Clara. We're going to get right into Adolf Hitler's mother. I know we talked about her before, like really briefly when we were reading some sentences about her and how it maybe have formed the um, psychosis with Adolf Hitler. So yeah, they were like, good luck with that one. Exactly. So I think it's just interesting. I've already read about Hitler's mom several times, but let's get into it. Alrighty, let's get into Clara. All right, it may build some foundations of how violence can be explored through who we choose to date, who we choose to be in a relationship, and she didn't have a choice. Let's just put it at that point. She did not have a choice who to date. Right. Adolf Hitler's mother didn't have any autonomy over her body. All laws and moral values were against her right to not bear children so young, have um, be married so young, have a domineering husband forever. Right? Excuse me as I get comfortable, y'all. Hold on one second. Oh my God, I got this good old conditioner up on my hair. Yes, indeed. It is currently, I don't know, it's 2:26 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, right? Okay, 2:26 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Thank y'all for being here. Okay, for this book reading. I really know that this kind of information, even though it may be a little deep, however, knowledge is knowledge and information is knowledge that can be carried on. Okay, each one teach one. Although most of us here, right, are magicians and are already aware of the effects of childhood development that can lead up into adulthood. But I'm just more curious about the psychology of a dictator, right? May we put the patterns together, okay? May we connect patterns of psychosis with different forms of dictators and how they come about, okay? How they come about, right? So let's find the chapter that we that I had highlighted. Where was it? We're a Louisiana. I hope y'all are having a really good morning. I hope y'all are having a really good moment. Bear with me 1 second, 1 second, 1 second. Be sure to like the stream. There's the father. We got into the father. Um, like I said, the father's historical facts isn't as seamless as Hitler's mother historical facts, which is quite interesting, right? In the connection of how we were talking about the other day, how Germany represents Adolf Hitler's mother. Okay, yeah, being saved by the Jewish people, which was his domineering, very psychotic father, right? So I love how a lot of writers, scholars, however, people who have their own opinions, right, um, put those symbologies together. Germany representing Adolf Hitler's mother, the woman he could not save. He didn't have the ability to save, and she didn't have the ability to save herself. And then they say Jewish Jews. Why they say Jews? I mean, they didn't attach the land to it, but but the Jewish people represented Adolf Hitler's father. Therefore, that's why they needed to be persecuted in the unconscious mind and the unconscious behavior of a psychopath. This is what some psychologist was putting together, right? The, the connections. Very interesting. So, okay, let's just say this a little bit before we get into Hitler's mom, y'all. So, once again, this is called For Your Own Good by Alice Miller. Hidden Cruelty in child rearing, and the roots of violence. Okay, the roots of violence. Adolf Hitler is not the only um, psychopath that she's explored the history of violence that stem from early childhood development stages. Okay, here we go. Only a child's only a child's unconscious can copy a parent so exactly that every characteristic of the parent can later be found in the child. So, the good and the bad, the things that you absolutely despise in your parent, you'll be surprised how that comes about, that behavior and that personality trait will come about in your adulthood. The very same thing that you despise and or that you loved about your parent or your guardian that you are aware of will form itself in adulthood. So that is what she said. Only a child's unconscious can copy a parent so exactly that every characteristic of the parent can later be found in the child. The phenomenon, however, is one that usually escapes the attention of biographers. Obviously, I don't think that biographers are writing about early childhood development. This is why we have psychologists. Okay, so now let's get it on. Let's get on to Hitler's mother. The chapter here is called Hitler's Mother, Her Position in the Family, and Her Role in Adolf's Life. It's not boring, believe me, it's pretty good. Just something to possibly take interest in. And what I had said earlier about the mom had no autonomy on her life, right? Therefore, she didn't have a choice. I really feel like today, maybe not all women, but most of the women that I know have a choice and an option. Most of the men that I know have a choice and an option who to choose to form bonds with. But at this point, a period like in 1858, these women ain't had no options, y'all. Okay. So, all the biographers agree that Clara Hitler loved her son very much and spoiled him. It must be stated at the outset that this view is a contradiction in terms if we take love to mean that the mother is open and sensitive to her child's true needs. This is precisely what is lacking if a child is spoiled. Example, if his every wish is granted and he is showered with things he does not need, all this simply as erosis. I'm sorry, I didn't look up that word. Hold on. All that simply is for that which parents are unable to give their child because of their own problems. So basically, giving your child undivided attention, right? Okay, putting your child first, not putting alcohol first, not putting the game console first, not putting television first. You know, the most people I do know do put their children first. They don't even be eating food or drinking any water unless their kid is comfortable. Okay. And I'm talking about in a lot of different stages in their life. So this is what she's mean when she says this is precisely what is lacking if a child is spoiled. Okay. Um, if we take love to mean that the mother is open and sensitive to her child's true needs, having the undivided attention of the child, putting the child's needs first, and foremost. Okay, this is precisely sorry, what is lacking if a child is spoiled. Example, if um, if his every wish is granted and he is showered, he does not need all this simply as is for that which parents are unable to give their child because of their own problems. Therefore, if a child is spoiled, this points to a serious deficiency, which is then confirmed in later life. So, if a child is spoiled, she's saying that it points to a serious deficiency. I happen to know that children who are poor, um, and depending on the situation, it was a deficiency as well. But anyway, let's continue. If Hitler had really been loved as a child, he would also have been capable of love. So if he was receiving the nurturing from both guardians in his childhood, then he would have showed love in a public sense, in any form of sense for himself through self-love or the relationships that he built. If there were love in the foundational standpoint, I just can't. This he would have obviously exuded love, okay, by the work that he put into his lifespan, okay? Basically, his relationships with women, his perversions, and his whole aloof and basically cold relationships with people in general reveal that he never received love from any quarter. So he had cold relationships with people. Okay. Before Adolf was born, Clara had three children, all of whom died of dysphoria. And dysphoria is a serious infection, like a viral infection of the nose and the mouth. Apparently, it is simply avoidable with a vaccination. So apparently, at this time, they didn't have a particular vaccination for children um, to be able to fight out this form of infection that apparently was so severe. Okay, dysphoria. So, before Adolf was born, Clara had three children, all of whom died of dysphoria within a month of one another. The first two were perhaps already ill when the third child was born, who then died when he was only 3 days old. 13 months later, Adolf was born. I reproduce here Sterling's very useful chart. And it's just basically a chart of um, the birth dates, the time of their birth, and their time of the death of each of Clara's children. Okay, this is very interesting because it was so close together that she gave birth, and so very close together that they all transitioned. So the first guy, it was Gustav. He died from dysphoria. He was born in 1885. He died when he was 2 years old. The second child was Ida, born 1886, died 1887. She was 1 years old. The third child, Otto, born 1887. She didn't stand a chance. She didn't stand a chance. Back to back to back to back to back. That same child died in 1887 at 3 days old. Adolf, of course, was born April the 20th, right? 1889, right? After Adolf, there was an Edmund. He was born in 1894, so she got a little bit of a break. He died in 1900 at almost 6 years old, so he almost made it to 6 years old. And the last child that Hitler's mom had, her name was Paula, and she was born in 1896, 2 years after Edmund. And Adolf and Paula were the only two surviving children out of five, or, out of the complete five, to survive, right? One, two, three, four. Oh, wow, six. So she had six children and two survived, right? And did you see the dates? Back to back to back, she was pregnant. If you thought that was a fun or a picnic to be um, tortured in that way, you are you are different. Anyway, let's keep going, y'all. Let's keep going. So it says the petrified legend depicts Clara as a loving mother who, after the death of her first three children, showered all her affection on Adolf. It is probably no accident that all biographers who paint this lovely Madonna like portrait are men. Interesting. A candid contemporary woman who is herself a mother will perhaps have a somewhat more realistic picture of the events preceding Adolf's birth and a more accurate one of the sort of emotional atmosphere surrounding his first year of life, so crucial for a child's sense of security. Okay, so here we go. Now here we go. 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 Oh no, liquor store, we ain't going. Okay, here we go. So when she is 16, Clara Ponsel moves into the home of her uncle Alois. Now, if you've been here through my other readings, we know who Alois is, right? That's Hitler's pappy. They have it, quote unquote, Uncle Alois, where she is to take care of his sick wife and two children. There she is later made pregnant by the master of the house even before his wife is dead. And when she is 24, the 48-year-old Alois marries her. Within a period of 2.5 years, she gives birth to three children and loses all three in the space of 4 or 5 weeks. Let us try to imagine what actually happened. The first child, Gustav, comes down with dysphoria in November. Clara can scarcely take care of him because she is about to give birth to her third child, Otto, who probably catches the diseases from Gustav and dies after 3 days. Soon after, before Christmas, Gustav dies soon after before Chris oh my bad. Gustav dies, and 3 weeks later the second child, Ida, as well. I'm sorry, I can't even keep up all the children. It's like woo. Thus, within a period of 4 to 5 weeks, Clara has lived through the birth of one child and the death of three. Thus, within a period of 4 to 5 weeks, Clara has lived through the birth of one child and the death of three. A woman need not be especially sensitive for such a shock to make her lose her equilibrium. That's weird how she worded that. Especially if, like Clara, she is confronted with domineering and demanding husband when she was practically an adolescent, right? 16 years old. domineering, reigning master. She called him Uncle Alois, but she gave him 6 children. Perhaps as a practicing Catholic, she regarded these 3 deaths as punishment for her adulterous relations with Alois, but she was only 16. I mean, what really? Perhaps she reproached herself because the birth of her third child prevented her from taking good care of Gustav. In any case, a woman would have to be made of stone to remain untouched by these blows of fate, and Clara was not made of stone, but no one could help her to experience her grief. No one could experience her grief of losing 4 children. Her marital duties towards Alois continue. Her marital duties. For whatever was that mean? She didn't leave the house. She didn't leave the house. Her marital duties towards Alois continued, and in the same year as her daughter Ida's death, Clara became pregnant once again. In April of the following year, she gave birth to Adolf. It was because she could not deal adequately with her grief under these circumstances that the birth of a new child must have reactivated her recent shock, mobilizing her deepest fears. Mobilizing her deepest fears, a feeling of great insecurity regarding her ability as a mother. Somebody's outside screaming or something. Why don't they just say she was traumatized over and over and over and over and over and over again? It was because she could not deal adequately with her grief under these circumstances that the birth of a new child must have reactivated her recent shock, mobilizing her deepest fears, a feeling of great insecurity regarding her ability as a mother. What woman with these experiences behind her would not have been fearful during her new pregnancy of a repetition of the past? Yeah, that's crazy as hell. She didn't have no option or any choice to make this decision. Okay. It is scarcely conceivable that her son, in his early period of symbiosis with his mother, imbibed feelings of peace, contentment, and security along with her milk. It is more likely that his mother's wait, ooh. It is more likely that his mother's anxiety, the fresh memories of her 3 dead children, reactivated by Adolf's birth, and the conscious or unconscious fear that this child would die too were all communicated directly to her baby as if mother and child were one body. That's the interesting concept. So the hormones that's helping her pump their milk, right, to help formulate, and activate and connect her body to her infant, right? Um, Miller here is exploring the idea that it was within the anxieties and all of the trauma, fear that was triggered, okay, through her breastfeeding. It was also, of course, impossible for Clara to experience her anger towards her self centered husband who left her to her anguish because she had to get to her marital duties. This was what she was here to do. All the more then did her baby, who, after, and y'all think all those women had 21 kids, 18 kids, 7 kids, 6 kids, even the baby boomers, y'all think that was a happy time? They were lying. All the more then did her baby, they didn't know any better. And they were lying. Okay. All the more then did her baby, who, after all, did not have to be feared like her domineering husband, come to feel the force of these negative emotions. All this is destiny. We got a couple more minutes. It would be futile to try to find the guilty person. Many people have had similar fate. Hmm. In Hitler's case, there was an additional factor. He was unable to tell anyone about his feelings or about the deep anxiety stemming from the disturbed early relationship with his mother. He was forced to repress all this in order not to attract his father's attention and thus provoke fresh beatings. The only remaining possibility was to identify with the aggressor. The only way for him to not be beat severely was to identify and match unconsciously with his father's behavior, okay? Because this is like an unconscious behavior. This is a way that his human nature is protecting himself, right? Something else resulted from this unusual family constellation. Mothers who, after losing one child, have another often idealize the dead child. So basically, she's just going to talk about how, wow, imagine losing a child and then you talk about the death of your child to the child that actually survived, right? You're having conversations with it, the child that survived, about the death of your other children, like idealizing them like they were so precious, they were so wonderful, they were so great, they were so beautiful, they were so this or they were so that, they could never do so wrong, right? And they're telling this to the new child, right? And the new child in its mind will try to live up to those expectations, right, of the mother and or the father idealizing over a dead child, right? Basically beefing up, pumping up what the child was really like, okay, making them out of this angelic figure. And probably who wouldn't, I guess, after losing one, two, three, four, five children, right, back to back, who wouldn't say that they were angels? Because her and herself psychologically, I'm believing that she's thinking that her as a mother failed in some kind of way to protect her children. So that in the way for her or him, but in this case, her, Clara, is for her to idealize all of her children, right, in front of Adolf. And there's no goddamn way that anybody is going to be able to compete with dead children. Never. That can never happen. So that's just what she's talking about there. So we're just going to skip. We're going to skip because then she gives several examples about some of her patients, right? Um, who come in and officially talk about their dead sibling and how their mother would idealize or their father would idealize their dead sibling. And then these full blown adults are sitting down in therapy, and have never been able to go through the stages of grief of the death of their sibling. Um, you know, and living off the memory through their mother of how they were just this angel, how they were taken care of, their parents, how they could do no wrong. Anyway, let's move on because that's an awful position to be in, like, period. To lose one child. let alone for children. So, moving on here, y'all. So, let's get into, okay. Mm, okay. Since Adolf was the first child born after three other children had died, I cannot imagine how his mother's feeling towards him can be interpreted solely as one of devoted love, as described by his biographers. Okay, so she just wanted to clear that up right now. If you read any biographies and related to Hitler, right, if they paint a picture that his mother was the Madonna, the loving, caring individual, then they really didn't do their research, or they haven't really necessarily did the psychological research based upon how and why she reared Adolf in the way that she did. The birds are already like chirping a little bit. Crazy. It can appear from the outside that someone's every wish is being granted without this being the case, right? Being spoiled. Thus, a child can be spoiled with food, toys, and excessive concern without ever being seen or heeded for what he or she really is. Do a couple more minutes, y'all. Oh, here we go. Let's read a little bit from each chapter, the hot points, right? Since Clara extended her reverence for her husband even after his death to his pipes, we can scarcely imagine that her son would ever have been allowed to confide his true feelings to her, especially since his three dead siblings had surely always been good in his mother's mind, and now that they were in heaven, were unable to do anything bad anyway. Thus, Adolf could receive affection from his parents only at the expense of completing, um, disguising, and denying his true feelings. This gave rise to a whole mental outlook that Fest Fest must be another author, to be a continuous pattern in Hitler's life. Fest's biography begins with the following sentences with underscore this relevant and central point. All through his life, he made the strongest efforts to conceal as well as to glorify his own personality. Hardly any other prominent figure in history covered his track so well as far as his personal life was concerned. He stylized his persona with forceful and pedantic consistency. The image he had of himself was more that of a monument than of a man. From the start, he endeavored to hide behind it. Someone who has experienced his mother's love will never need to disguise himself in this way. So, once again, she's driving the point towards biographers who's written about Hitler. Okay, girl, we get it. We get it, girl, we get it. Okay. Hitler systematically tried to cut off all contact with his past. He did not allow his half brother Alois to come near him, and he made his sister Paula. Okay, we didn't hear about Alois, so he must have came much later. And he made his sister Paula, who kept house for him, change her name. But on the stage of world politics, he unconsciously enacted the true drama of his childhood, okay, under another guise. He, like his father before him, was now the dictator, the only one who had anything to say. He became his father. He didn't become his mother getting his ass. He became what broke his conscience, what split his conscience. It was the place of all the others to be silent and to obey. It was the place of all others to be silent and obey. He was someone who aroused fear. Who want to be around anybody like that? The people that pinpoint right here, the people who wanted to be around him, she theorized that they had the same or the similar childhood upbringing with a domineering father and a mother who had no voice and who had no body. Okay, so he was someone who aroused fear, but he also commanded the love of his people who prostrated themselves at his feet, just as the subservient Clara had once done at the feet of her husband. The special fascination Hitler held for women is well known. For the shy little girl in them, he embodied the admired father who knew exactly what was right and wrong, who could, in addition, offer them an outlet for the hatred they had bottled up since childhood. People still do this. This combination gave Hitler his great following among both women and men, for all these people had once been raised to be obedient, had grown up in an atmosphere of duty and Christian virtues. They had to learn at a very early age to repress their hatred and their needs. And now along came a man who did not question the underpinnings of this bulgarious mortality of theirs. Someone who, on the contrary, could put the obedience that had been instilled in them to good use. Child who never confronted them with searching questions or inner crisis, but instead provided them with a universal means for finally being able to live out in a thoroughly acceptable and legal way the hatred they had been repressing all their lives. Who would not take advantage of such an opportunity? The Jews could not be blamed for everything, and the actual erstwhile persecutors, one's own, often truly tyrannical parents could be honored and idealized. I known a woman who never happened to have a contact with a Jew. Skip. Okay, a little bit more, y'all. What is revealed here, as in the case of Alois and the other parents who beat their children, in the fear of a possible resurrection and return of the split off parts of the self. This is why beating is a never ending task. Behind it hovers fear of the emergence of one's own repressed weakness, humiliation, and helplessness, which one has tried to escape all one's life by means of grandiose behavior. Basically, those who beat their children are only covering up some form of weakness within them, and you damn right, it is a weakness. It is a great weakness to abuse children, a great weakness. You formed no intellect at all when you beat children. You teach them how to be obedient, to listen, to sit down and shut the fuck up. And we talked a lot about that extensively in the second reading about removing the voice of the child. I highly recommend you go back and listen to that because we talked about it and we talked about it, we talked about it, removing the voice from the child in the early stages, right? Removes its personality, removes its fight, removes the ability to critically think um, for himself. Let's continue on, y'all. Alois, with his position as a high-level customs official, Adolf as the Fuhrer, someone else as a psychiatrist who's never mind. Hmm. We'll read this and we'll be done. It says Helm Sterlins, which is another guy who wrote about Hitler. Helm Sterling's interesting study of Hitler's proceeds from the premise that Adolf's mother unconsciously delegated him to come to her rescue. According to this view, oppressed Germany would then be a symbol for the mother. This may be correct, but there can be no doubt that deep seated, intensely personal, and unconscious problems also find expression in the savage um, fantasy of Hitler's later actions, which represent a gigantic struggle to purge himself, for which Germany is a symbol of all traces of his boundless degradation. And we're going to end it right there. I'll put a pin in that page, y'all. Hold on 1 second. I'll be right back. We're going to put a pin to it right there. And we'll recap a little bit about Clara because you know, I think she got to the most of the high points of Clara and her inability to give her child undivided attention. She could spoil her child and give him, trinkets and this or that or whatever, but she wasn't fully there because if she was fully there, and I say this very respectfully and probably for those who don't know, If the mother is fully there, okay, and present in the child's life, okay, even for, you know, it can work on both ends, but we're speaking about Hitler, okay? If the mother was fully there in the child's life, she would not allow for Hitler to get his ass beat daily and consistently. Okay, not to say that was her fault. She had her own issues, right? Okay, coming into a woman prior, coming into a woman, okay, as a teenage girl, she had no choice or had no option. So we're not pointing the fingers as far as like, okay, as the mother, honestly, but we're talking about the condition of what occurred. Right back, y'all. Hold on. Here's just one step, let's just dance. We just have this one last chance. I'm in my mind, can't take you away. Can you picture that? So I can't see you can do anything. And I, don't you forget our past. Alright. Oh, well, I guess I didn't bring the book. Let me go grab it. That's so refreshing. And it smells so beautiful. Y'all know how I like things that smell good. Okay. Well, not things. Because when stuff smells wonderful. Hey. We're just going to do a recap. And I got 13 minutes left on time. But anyway, it smells wonderful. It smells like, I don't know. It smells like roses, vanilla, the aroma of like some tobacco musk. It smells so good. It smells like I'm somewhere like, I don't know, North Africa somewhere, I guess. Somewhere in Egypt. It smells so good. Anyway, hold on one second. Like, the one thing I cannot get over is, okay, y'all, so yeah, they only have like 1% on the phone. My phone was charging and it's been on the charge. Y'all know how it is. Let's just give him one more chance. God, it smells so good. Ah, I'm telling you, baby. Nothing like aromatherapy. Okay. Smells so good. So good. Yay. Anyway, I know the lighting is kind of crazy. I got conditioner on my hair because I'll be busy. I don't be playing, y'all. I don't be playing. Be moisturizing the hair and keeping it legit. Anyway, so here we go. Sorry about the lighting in advance. So, alrighty. I'm laughing at myself. So, what were we talking about? We were talking about Clara, obviously, but the last thing we were talking about was, yeah, I like how she goes back, you know. I still have to say that he was a dictator because he was a dictator. I think we all still have options on how we treat ourselves and how we treat each other, right? Based on our childhood experiences. Okay, we all have a right, we all have a choice, we all have a mind, right? But what she's coming from a psychologist, that all of his issues are from the unconscious. All right, and I guess it is from the unconscious because of his personality that was split when he was young boy from every day receiving beatings from his dad, and nobody was there to save him. His mother couldn't save him. She didn't know how to save them. She couldn't save herself, and nobody saved her. Okay, so they were all underneath this realm of master domineering and control, narcissist, psychopath, like personality traits. So, so his behaviors were unconscious because she talked a little bit about his relationships with like his friends, which because it was documented that Hitler's relationships with his friends were evidently very cold, right? He had no relationships, and how could he? Or, I mean, I don't fucking know. Why would I say how could he? I don't give a fuck if he had relationships or not. Like, severely, if how many people he's massacred and how many people who continue to follow his blueprint today. Like, I don't give a fuck. Um, I think it's just very interesting when it comes to the mind splitting, right? And it's completely operating from the traumatic field. All right, okay. Because if we do have right to make a choice, then his mind was split. Maybe he didn't have a choice, right? Because his mind was split psychologically. He had several different identities that he was operating from. Okay, he had an identity to uphold so he didn't get his ass beat consistently, although he still did, but he couldn't show any fear, he couldn't show any worry. He had to repress all of those emotions down, right? So he didn't have any friends, right? His relationship towards women, which we were talking about yesterday too, was very bizarre. Right? The relationship he had with women was very bizarre. Yes, I'm going to bed looking like Snuggle Bear. I don't care. Um, very cozy, very comfortable. So yeah. Hmm. Hmm. I'm still thinking about the right of choice though. But according to psychologists, if you really do think about it, there is no choice psychologically. There is no way to absolutely study the mind and the brain 100%, but you can study it through patterns over time, which they have been doing.